Mandela Bay's usable water is running out. With dam levels remaining extremely low, residents have been urged to help prevent the pollution of fresh water sources. To speak on this, we're joined virtually by the department spokesperson, Sputnik Rantau. Sputnik, thank you so much for your time this evening. Now, we would have learned from the water crisis in Cape Town not so long ago that the physical level of a dam is not a true reflection of the amount of usable water available to be consumed. Now, a few days ago, it was being reported that dam levels were at a combined capacity of around 14.7% down in Nelson Mandela Bay, but usable water was at 2.3%. What's the current state of play in Nelson Mandela Bay area with regards to how much usable water is actually available?
Thank you very much, Michelle. Yes, it is true. Your analysis is quite correct. And we were fortunate over the last couple of weeks that we had a bit of rain, and we also had some savings in terms of water use that allowed the levels to rise a bit to just around 17% and so on. But still, the usable amount of water remained under 3% or just about 3%. And therefore, that means that although we could be having those amounts of water in the different sources that we have, but the combined amount that we could be able to use is still terribly low. And that is why we still have the situation that we see in Nelson Mandela Bay, which we regard and have always said that it is a dire situation that is quite uncomfortable.
Now, there are various factors being put into place by the municipality there to try and ensure that not too much water is being used. Again, we saw that happening in Cape Town during their crisis a few years ago, putting a cap on how much water can be used in households. But we're also seeing reports of areas in Gqeberha, in Nelson Mandela Bay area, like in Chris Hani, in KwaNobuhle, where taps have quite literally run dry. How is that situation being controlled? Is that just a state of how the plumbing has been done in the city, in terms of some areas still having some water with a cap on it, while other areas don't have water at all? Are you able to shed some light on how that situation has played out?
The issue of putting a cap on water use is one of the ways in which we are looking at ensuring that we do not overuse water, so that we can be able to stretch the amount of water that is available, and that is also still coming in primarily from your areas like the Harip Dam and so on, and as well as from some of the groundwater that we are exploiting at the moment. And obviously the interbasin transfers that are also being put in place. But obviously that has got to be done across the metro. So even though you might find that in terms of implementing that program, it would have started in some areas and still rolling out to others. So it is not just focused on particular areas, but obviously what we are looking at is to target particularly those people that are overusing and exceeding what we have implored people to use at the rate of about 50 liters per person per day. And therefore we're looking at that, because in the ultimate, the first prize is that we must reduce the water use. We have come down to almost between 290 to 300 megaliters per day, and coming down to the desired 230 megaliters per day. But in the ultimate, if we don't still keep that consciousness of reducing use in each individual area of operation, then we might still be heading towards a difficult time before the rains come, probably later in the year, with all things being equal.
You are calling on residents to help prevent the pollution of fresh water sources. What do you mean by that, and what kind of message are you hoping to get across?
The pollution of water sources is something that is very problematic for the country in general. So what we did in 2016, we initiated what we call as a department the Clear Rivers campaign, which is looking at raising awareness within communities, but also raising that kind of buy-in, that communities must be able to go out of their way and in appreciation of the watercourses that are in their vicinity, go out of their way to actually make sure that those watercourses are kept clean and no pollution is allowed into those watercourses, be it rivers, be it wetlands, be it streams and any other water bodies. So that is the campaign that we started in 2016. But what we did was we looked at how we can even raise the profile even more by marrying it to the month of July, during which we also have the nationally recognized Mandela Day of 18th of July, which is the birth month of the first democratic president of the country, as we all know. Because particularly what we are saying is we need to also infuse the message of volunteerism, that we must look at the issue of even keeping those rivers and streams clean as a sense or as a way of volunteering your services to the country, individually and collectively as communities, be it industry, be it communities. And we have seen over the years a huge amount of interest from our partners, across the sector and even across, the private sector as well, that are looking at using this clear campaign, a Clear Rivers campaign, and particularly Mandela Month, to also be able to put their efforts to the wheel.
Just one final question about the crisis in Nelson Mandela Bay. I mean, this is a crisis that's really happening in real time, Sputnik. Can you give us a sense of how communication is working on this? I mean, are you having status meetings between national and the local municipality down in Nelson Mandela Bay every day, checking water levels and who is doing what in the crisis? I think people would be quite interested to know just how communication is happening in this and where they then fit into how to try and help prevent an even bigger crisis than it is already.
So thank you very much for that question. Yes, we are working very closely together. In fact, on the issue of communication, what we have even done is that the minister and the DG have even taken a decision to say that some of us need to be working very closely with the metro, to such an extent that there is actually a number of man days that we spend in the metro. For instance, I've been in the metro since last week Wednesday. And this is going to continue right through until this coming Friday, because we have to get to work together with the metro. The metro has also pulled in capacity from their development agency, but we are also having input from the private sector. What we are doing is to spread the word. We have also brought in some of our own capacity that we had set aside for communication across other provinces and brought it into the metro so that we can also make use of opportunities within the community media as well as mainstream media. We cannot leave out mainstream media. There are a number of campaigns as well as corporate communication efforts that we are putting together. But the idea is that we have to sustain that communication throughout this period and beyond until we are able to see some benefit.
I know I said that was my final question, but I've just been asked to ask you one final question while we have your time, Sputnik, because we know you're very busy and keeping tabs on various crises around the country, because we are a water-scarce country, aren't we? So this is not going to go away. Are you able to give us any update? Now, this is a bit of a curveball because you didn't know I was going to ask you about this. An update on the Ugu district in KZN. We do know it's been reported on that there's been a water crisis there for some time now, even before we saw those devastating floods in KZN. Are you able to give us any information? I know local government officials were expected to meet with the disgruntled residents there just to get the communication going there, as we've just speaking about how important that is. Do you have any information as to whether there's light at the end of the tunnel for those citizens there?
Yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel, Michelle, because the other time when we were in Bizana, we actually left Bizana and then our next stop was Ugu with the minister and the premier. And from there were processes that were put in place. But it is important for us to understand that Ugu is also one of those areas where we found that there are things that can be done in the immediate that can be able to assist the situation there. Like we found in Nelson Mandela, where you have a need for water to come in, but you're losing water through basic things like leakages with failing infrastructure. And part of those things was to identify those quick wins that can be able to bring some kind of a balance to the system in order for us to be looking at the long term that must be obviously supported by what we can do in the immediate. That process, I don't have the latest on it, but it's information that we can quickly be able to get back to viewers about, as well as particularly the community of Ugu in its entirety.
Okay, we thank you for that and for your insight. As always, that's Water and Sanitation Department spokesperson Sputnik Karatau giving us the very latest on that ongoing crisis in Nelson Mandela Bay, and as you heard there at the end, also in the Ugu district in KZN.